Welcome everyone to our brief video on the role your IT provider or MSP is going to play in your CMMC compliance journey. If you aren't familiar with Paragus, we are a 25-year-old employee-owned business based in Massachusetts and serving clients all over New England. Our team of over 60 employee owners work with companies on their IT strategy, their IT support, and their IT compliance, helping them to navigate challenges, address issues, and make sense of what can sometimes feel like a confusing space. My name is Delcy Bean, and I'm the founder and CEO of Paragus IT. I want to thank you for tuning in today, and I hope you find this video helpful. Without further ado, let's jump into this important topic. For organizations who aren't already compliant, getting fully CMMC compliant has probably recently shifted from a future problem to a right now reality. Today, we're going to talk about one of the biggest obstacles that you may face in that journey that might not yet be on your radar. Specifically, we're going to look at the massive elephant in the room that often gets ignored during CMMC discussions, the role of your outsourced IT provider. Whether you're managing your compliance internally or you're utilizing a specialized third-party consultant to help you, if you outsource any of your day-to-day IT support, this video is for you. Your outsourced IT vendor likely has unrestricted access to your infrastructure and therefore is going to be included in your CMMC certification process. Today, I'm going to pull back the curtain on exactly how IT providers fit into your assessment, the hard questions you need to be asking them, and how to avoid the biggest pitfalls that are currently derailing certifications. During this video, we're going to cover exactly where CMMC stands right now, including the critical deadline that hit in 2025 and the ones looming in late 2026. We'll walk through the actual phases of getting compliant, from self-assessment to formal certification. Then we'll dive into why your IT vendor is fully in scope, the exact questions you need to ask them tomorrow, and how strategies like enclaves can save you significant time and money. Finally, we'll wrap up with the biggest gotchas we are seeing out in the field right now. Let's start with the facts. For years, CMMC felt like a moving target. That ended when the final rule took effect in December 2024. As of November 10th, 2025, we officially entered Phase 1 of the DoD's rollout. What does Phase 1 mean for you? It means the DoD is now actively including CMMC requirements in select solicitations. If you handle controlled unclassified information, or CUI, you are now required to conduct a rigorous self-assessment against the 110 controls of NIST 800-171, post your score in the SPRS, and have a senior executive sign off on it. The days of pencil whipping a compliance score are over. Executive liability is now in play. While Phase 1 is a wake-up call, Phase 2 is the actual alarm bell. Starting November 10th, 2026, self-attestation will no longer be enough for contracts involving CUI. This is when Level 2 C3PAO, that is, Certified Third-Party Assessment Organization, certifications become a mandatory condition of contract award. This means if you don't have a formal third-party stamp of approval by this date, you cannot win new DoD contracts or exercise option periods on many existing ones. It transforms CMMC from an IT nuisance into a literal revenue and business continuity issue. Here's the roadmap we'll use. Notice this is a program, not a one-time project. A point we'll reinforce internally because client expectations often drift into install tools and we're done. Also, this is where your MSP fits. They are typically deeply involved in scoping, the technical evidence, the tooling, and the configurations that implement controls, as well as the ongoing monitoring and change management that keeps you compliant over time. If you remember only one gotcha from today, scoping is the most important phase, and it's where many failed assessments originate. The discipline here is map CUI ingress, storage, processing, and access. In other words, you need to know not only where it exists, but also how it flows internally every step of the way, including entering and leaving the organization. It's also important to know when and how CUI is destroyed, and what evidence or proof of that there is. The scoping phase is where you can make operational and technical adjustments to reduce that scope. Keep in mind, less is more. Then you define your boundary in a way an assessor can understand and challenge. A useful rule of thumb from internal project planning: if it touches COI, it's in scope unless technically isolated. In a little while, we'll come back to this topic when we talk about the concept of enclaves. Everything starts with a gap assessment. This is where you measure your current environment against the 110 controls of NIST 800-171. You're looking at access control, incident response, physical security, and auditing. A self-assessment or gap assessment is not a scan. It interviews, it's evidence review, and configuration validation across the control set. The assessment isn't about systems, users, and processes involved in handling CUI, not everything, everywhere. The POAM is where gaps become an executable plan. Your POAM, or Plan of Action and Milestones, is essentially a prioritized punch list of everything that is broken, missing, underdocumented in your network. Keep in mind, for phase 1, you can have items on your POAM, but by the time you sit for your level 2 certification, these items must be fully resolved. This is where you will spend 80% of your time and your budget. Remediation typically takes organizations anywhere from 6 to 12 months, depending on how far behind they are. And this isn't just about buying a new firewall or turning on multi-factor authentication. It's about fundamentally changing how your business operates. It involves writing extensive security plans, or SSPs, changing employee workflows, configuring your logs, and proving that these controls are working consistently over time. A strong SSP is not a template. Internal guidance is blunt. Every document must reference actual systems, match real configurations, and align with evidence. Teams often underestimate how evidence-heavy this is. A good evidence approach maps each practice to specific artifacts, screenshots, logs, policy excerpts, outputs, and keeps everything in a structured, read-only evidence package once finalized. Once you think you're done, you move to the readiness assessment. This is basically a mock audit. You bring in a practitioner to grill you just like a C3PAO would. You want to fail here because behind closed doors, you can fail, you can fix, and you can address lingering issues before it counts. A readiness assessment is where you pressure test the whole story. Can you defend the scope? Can you walk an assessor through the evidence? And does your SSP actually reflect the environment? Internal project planning includes a mock assessor interview, SSP consistency reviews, evidence spot checks, and a boundary challenge exercise as explicit readiness activities. This is also where your MSP's participation is essential. Many assessors' questions are operational. Who reviews logs? How often? Show me the workflow. If your MSP is the one receiving alerts or doing maintenance, you need them in the rehearsal. This is where all your hard work pays off. If all the prior steps were completed thoroughly, then the actual certification should be fairly straightforward. I'll warn you though, right now there's a massive bottleneck in the industry because there simply aren't enough certified auditors to handle the influx of defense contractors. If you wait until mid-2026 to book your auditor, you'll probably be too late. However, even after you obtain the required status, the work doesn't stop. Operationally, you need discipline change control and ongoing evidence hygiene. Internally, we explicitly call out the need to prevent scope drift and freeze major architectural change during critical assessment cycles unless controlled. Now we get to the core of today's presentation. I see a lot of businesses hire a specialized CMMC consultant and try to run the compliance project completely siloed from their day-to-day managed IT provider. This is a massive mistake. Your IT vendor holds the administrative keys to your kingdom. Even if you're driving the compliance initiative, your IT vendor is the one who actually implements the logging, configures the firewalls, and manages the mobile device policies. If they aren't at the table from day one, your policies will never match your actual technical configurations. There's a concept in CMMC called flow down. If you handle CUI and your outsourced IT provider has administrative access to your network, they are considered part of your supply chain. In other words, they're in scope. Here's the blunt truth. CMMC is assessed against the system that processes, stores, transmits COI. If your MSP's tools or staff touch that system, their RMM, their remote admin, their backup, their logging, their firewall management, their management of your Microsoft 365 tenant, they are, in fact, part of the control story, whether you like it or not. If an engineer at your IT provider's help desk is compromised, your COI is compromised. The DoD knows this. Auditors know this. Therefore, your IT provider's internal security posture is going to be scrutinized right alongside yours. A useful way to frame this is, in many environments, the MSP either implements controls, operates them, or holds the evidence. Internal guidance calls out that assessors will look for specifically like policy must state who reviews logs and how often, and they expect that demonstrated cadence, not intent. Also, note a frequent miss. Remote maintenance controls or RMM tools and vendor access are commonly overlooked. So even if your MSP isn't your CMMC consultant, they are almost always going to own a major piece of the controls that implement your proof of CMMC compliance. Assessments bog down when the team can't answer who owns this control and who can produce the evidence on demand. Internal project planning recommends explicit evidence standards. Screenshots must include timestamps and full context. Logs must show source and relevant timestamps. Set up an evidence index early and assign owners. It's also smart to set a lightweight change control policy during the heavy assessment remediation period so you don't fix the environment out from under your own documentation. Use this slide to get clarity without argument. You're trying to determine, are they prepared to support your certification effort? Do they understand scoping and how their tools and staff touch COI? Do they have documented maturity, SSPs, and processes? Or are they winging it? A supplier questionnaire example shows the kinds of questions primes ask suppliers. Have you performed an IS 171 self-assessment? Have you posted the score in the SPRS? When will you achieve 110? Are you pursuing third-party certification, and when? Because your IT provider is in scope, you need to interrogate them. Tomorrow morning, you should ask your account manager a very direct question. Are you, as our MSP, CMMC certified? Or are you on a concrete roadmap to become one? If the answer is a blank stare or a dismissive CMMC only applies to you, not us, you have a major problem. You need a partner who is walking the same walk, eating their own cooking, and subjecting themselves to the same rigorous standards that you are required to meet. If they aren't fully certified yet, which is common given the auditor backlog, your follow-up question must be, do you have an active system security plan, SSP, that documents how your organization complies with 110 controls of NIS 800-171? Ask to see it. Ask to see their SPRS score. They don't have to show you their deepest, darkest network secrets, but they should be able to produce an executive summary that proves that they take their own internal security and as seriously as they take yours. And to be clear, this isn't a layup. There are many things that a typical MSP is doing or not doing that is going to cause a compliance issue. They might be using tools that aren't FedRAMP certified. Their staff might not be background checked. In fact, their staff might not even be US citizens or even reside in the US. And this goes beyond just the initial certification. There can exist a fundamental friction between compliance and IT operations. Compliance wants everything locked down, logged, and restriction. Operations wants everything fast, easy, and accessible to keep your employees productive. If your IT provider isn't part of the conversation, they will inadvertently break your compliance. They might push a global update that resets a security configuration or create a temporary admin account to fix a printer and forget to delete it. You need an IT provider who understands that their operational habits must adapt to your regulatory reality. If the idea of getting your entire company and your IT provider compliant sounds daunting and expensive, I want to introduce you to a concept that can save you a lot of time. Enclaves. An enclave is a completely segmented, isolated IT environment dedicated exclusively to handling CUI. Instead of upgrading your entire 100-person company's network to meet NIS 800-171, you build a secure vault that only the 10 employees who actually need to touch the DoD data can access. Enclaves drastically shrink your attack surface and, more importantly, your audit scope. If CUI never touches your main corporate network doesn't have to go through the grueling Level 2 C3PAO assessment. This is also going to vastly simplify the relationship with your IT provider. They can manage your standard corporate network normally, while a specialized, highly restricted set of controls governs the enclave. It is the fastest, most cost-effective way to achieve compliance without disrupting your entire business. To wrap up, I want to share the 3 biggest gotchas we're seeing out there that are actively derailing businesses. The first is the timing trap. Business leaders look at the November 2026 deadline and think they have plenty of time. They don't. Remediation takes 6 to 12 months. Getting on a C3PAO schedule takes another 6 months. If you are not actively remediating your environment today, you are mathematically at risk of missing the 2026 enforcement cutoff, which means losing your ability to bid on contracts. Gotcha number 2 is the tooling myth. So many companies think they can buy their way into compliance. They migrate to Microsoft GCC High, buy a fancy SIM tool, and assume that they're good to go. Tools do not equal compliance. CMMC heavily focuses on governance, policies, and evidence. You can have the most secure cloud environment in the world, but if you don't have the written SSP and the documented procedures to prove how you manage it, you will fail your audit. The final gotcha brings us right back to the theme of today's presentation, ignoring the IT supply chain. We have seen companies spend hundreds of thousands of dollars securing their own house, only to fail the readiness assessment because their MSP wasn't compliant. Do not assume your IT provider has this handled just because they are the computer guys. You must treat them as an extension of your own risk profile. Hold them accountable, demand proof of their maturity, include them in your readiness assessment, and align your compliance strategies. The CMMC Phase 2 deadline is coming, and while many businesses are playing chicken, hoping that the rules will change again, all signs point to the deadline being real. If this is true, this will permanently alter the landscape of the defense industrial base. The companies that survive and thrive will be the ones that stop viewing compliance as an IT expense and start viewing it as a competitive advantage. Your next step is clear. Schedule a meeting with your IT provider this week. Ask the hard questions about their internal SSSP and demand a clear gap assessment of your own environment. I hope this video was helpful to you. If you have any questions that it did not answer, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to help any organization answer some of these tough questions and navigate this difficult space. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your day.